Recording will start soon. We're transcribing. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome. We've got some folks here in Denver. Say hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, Leah, how are you?
I'm great. I'm doing really well. A big AI day kind of caught up. I haven't been able to give a lot of time to AI for the past week because of work, and it was nice to kind of just catch up.
Yeah. It was a big day, though. It's funny. Last week we do the Everyday AI newsletter, and last week it was kind of a slow news week. We're like, this week's probably going to be big, and then Google announced today that their AI is going to be rolled into Google Docs and Sheets and everything like that. And then OpenAI announced GPT-4. And then Microsoft announced that they laid off one of their ethics teams.
I don't know if they announced it. I think it was leaked.
Oh, maybe it was leaked.
The media.
But it also seems like, maybe because OpenAI had that covered, I don't know. But we'll see. Yeah,
I think there's more to it than we know. And I like to think that maybe they laid off the ethics team, but they figured out a different way to solve ethical challenge. I don't do ethics. I mean, yeah.
Well, Kyle, did you guys see that exchange with the ethics team and I guess their manager? Because it was basically like, the guy who was laid off was saying, maybe we should reconsider this, given, what we do and what's kind of coming. And the manager basically replied, yeah, considering it, and the answer is still no. Doesn't change things operationally, from a P&L point of view. So we're just moving in this direction. So it doesn't seem like it was tracking toward, OpenAI's got this covered. It seems like it's either a business decision on Microsoft's part or all bets are off and we can't control it anyway.
I don't know. It's crazy. Anyway, welcome everybody. This is the AI Artist Salon. We are the criteria for being a part of this group is be curious about AI and hopefully be a little adventurous and exploratory. And I think we've got that in spades with this group. We have a Discord. If you want to geek out, you can go in the Discord. You can generate images with Midjourney, now with with Stable Diffusion, and we've got GPT 3.5 in there. But now with GPT-4 out, our Discord server is outdated. We also have a LinkedIn group if you want to start to talk business stuff or share things you're learning there. And we are about exploring and AI and all the like. We've got some really interesting speakers tonight. And Leah, what do you want to say about what we do?
I want to say that just when we think we know what we do, everything starts to change and shift, and then we have conversations about it, which is because that's what AI is doing. We were talking earlier today about how we started the salon. I think we're 3 months in, and it feels like it's been a lifetime of evolving and evolution and growth. It's very, very exciting. I think that as a photographer who lives in a world that is a market that is shrinking and getting smaller and smaller and smaller for commercial professional photographers, not related to AI, it's refreshing to be involved in AI at a moment in time when there's so much happening and it's expanding and growing and enthusiastic. So thank you all for being here. I'm happy you're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the way we like to start these off, from a philosophical standpoint, I think these meetings are really, really important because just having a community online, it can get a little anonymous at times. Social media can be anything but. And I think really, getting to meet human beings and talk with human beings is important. I think that individuals will make a huge difference in the future of AI. We're not just at the mercy of machines, and what our intentions are is actually really important. So with that, what we like to do is kind of go around and introduce ourselves. If you're online, please raise your hand, and Ken will call on you, and he's going to hold you to 60 seconds. Here in Denver, since we've got some folks in the room, maybe we'll go first, and I'll just sort of spin my machine around the microphone.
I would just like to jump in and
please.
say something for the ladies. So I'm looking at my screen right now, and I know there's some other women who are joining us tonight, and I would like to see a few other people introduce themselves. You don't have, thank you. You don't have to be on camera, but I would just like to hear some women's voices in the mix here at our salon.
So what you're saying, Leah, is there's enough pasty white guys.
There's a lot of pasty white guys on the screen right now. We need to mix it up a little bit.
All right, good. I like it. I fully support the effort. Let's go around. So here and there, I'll just sort of spin my machine towards you, but the mics can pick you up, so you don't have to scream at the machine. But why don't we just go around here and introduce yourselves? And you got 60 seconds. Just talk a little bit about who you are, and then what's your interest in AI, or sort of where are you on the journey? And it could be anywhere from, I don't know, someone told me to come here, to, I invented the shit. So with that.
I don't think we know who starts.
Hey, hang on. I broke. Okay, I think we're good. Can you all hear me? Yes?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. So I would be more careful then.
I can see myself there. Great. Hey, my name's David Mondragon. I work at a company called Invoke. We have our own home-built speech recognition engine, although it's built on Kotlin originally. So we've been doing speech dictation in healthcare for about 10 years. That came about because my CEO came and stood behind me and said, "Can we do medical?" Because we've been doing contact center. And I was like, hold my beer. So we've been doing that ever since, and now it's our only vertical that we're working at. Lots of machine learning, of course, building very large models on our own hardware for many years, and then now we do all that all at AWS automatically, quite often, every day, all day. Yeah, I'm interested in AI and bringing some of the information back to my research and development team. And so this is, stuff's out there, it's been talked about for quite some time. At the healthcare conferences, there really isn't, AI has been there for quite some time, but not the real stuff that's happening now. So very interested in learning, and happy to be here. Thanks. Great.
Welcome.
I'm Samir. I work for a company called Imadex. We're creating a computer vision model that works against chest x-rays to detect lung cancer.
Oh,
Nice. AI.
Yes.
It is a corner of AI, and I'm mostly a hack. I shouldn't say that. But I've done our modeling, but I don't know a ton about other parts of AI. So very interesting.
Like all the new popular AI.
Yeah. I'm like the old curmudgeon. What I look like.
You're like the data model AI guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like pictures and words.
We add boxes to pictures.
I see.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Steve Ludwig. I'm self-employed. I don't know anything about AI really. He's been trying to teach me, and I'm too stupid to figure it out. So I thought maybe if I listen more. Yeah. So I'm very interested in higher education. I was on the board of regents for the University of Colorado for 12 years. That's like their governing body. It's like their board of directors. So I write a weekly newsletter about higher ed and stuff, and I'm very interested in all this.
Great. All right, you virtual people, go.
Okay, looks like Eric Rowland, you're up first.
Hi, sorry. I'm Eric Rowland. My company does data mining, so we do a lot of NLP and computer vision. And I'm doing a side project with a friend right now. We're summarizing legal videos. So I'm summarizing the Murdoch trial, and I've already got some clips up, and we're putting it all together into a nicer presentation. So I'll share it in the Discord if anybody wants to check it out. But I finally had an excuse to use GPT for something. And we actually kind of ran into a problem with 3.5 where the summaries were not always consistent. And my friend's been checking out GPT-4 today to see the delta, and he thinks it's promising. But anyway, still definitely human in the loop sort of function. And I think that, yeah, I'll just say that I think people get overly excited about full automation with this. Rather, I think we're going to be human in the loop for some time to come.
Yeah. And by the way, someone asked what could GPT-4 do that 3 couldn't. One of the biggies is it's 32,000 tokens. So that's 25,000 words, up from 3,000 words for GPT 3.5.
That is awesome.
All right. Okay, Jackie Dana, you're up.
Hey there. I am a writer, freelance, and also fiction over in St. Louis. And I started using Midjourney back, I don't know, maybe last summer. I don't even know, like however long ago. It seems like years ago now. And when ChatGPT first launched, I jumped on it right away. And I've been using it pretty consistently for all of my writing projects. I did NaNoWriMo in November, which for those that don't know is the National Novel Writing Month. And I was playing with what it could do for fiction back then and was really, like just helping like come up with ideas or fixing things. And I've been using it for a lot of my writing projects. And I'm interested in what you guys are talking about because I've been doing a lot of writing about it for writers and like trying to educate fellow writers about how it can be used as a really useful tool. And a lot of people are afraid of it. And I'm trying to say, yeah, you don't want it to write your novel, but there's a lot of things it can do, like help you with titles or summaries or outlines and things like that. So I work for Namecheap, and I've been doing some work there with it to try to educate like our customers and just people internally, and then for some other publications on my own, just trying to educate people. So there's a lot of fear within the writing community about it. I think some people are afraid it's going to take away all of our jobs.
All right, Jackie, we're gonna have to leave it there.
Yep. So
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Dan Murray, you're up next.
Hey everyone, I'm Dan Murray. I'm up in Boulder. I'm an entrepreneur and investor, self-employed. I just have dove into this generative AI thing. I actually started a meetup here in Boulder called the Rocky Mountain AI Interest Group. And Kyle, I think I reached out to you about that, and I'm hoping to sort of cross-promote the groups and stuff like that. We're doing a meeting in April 11th on ChatGPT, and we're going to have a panel of 3 speakers on that. So, Kyle, is it okay if I post a link in the chat to our group?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Cool.
in fact, one of the things that we talked about possibly doing is doing an in-person kind of prompt mashup here in Denver, where we combine our 2 groups and do.
Absolutely.
Do
So super stoked to be here. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to have you, Dan.
Nice to have you, Dan.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay, Rebecca, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Becky Cooperman. I am currently focused on strategic foresight. So helping businesses, organizations, people look further into the future to improve their resiliency, identify risks, identify opportunities. And of course, technology and AI are driving that and have been for a while. So it's really exciting to be here with everybody, and I'm always learning something new from y'all. So thanks.
Thanks for being here, Becky.
Yeah, great to have you.
Thank you. Terry, you're up.
Hi, I'm Terry, also known as Terry AI on Twitter. I'm a creative. I've been using AI services since 2020 or late 2020, and super excited about like my trajectory through all these incredible tools. So I guess that's about all I have to say. I don't know, author of 3 AI generated books. Not on AI, but they're picture books. So just to clarify, not novels, picture books. Yeah. Anyways, it's great to have you all here, and I will move on, Ken. I was filling this quota here.
Yeah, thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
And we see some ladies in the mix here. Yeah.
Definitely. Welcome back, Terry. Okay, Jeff Gray, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Jeff Gray. I'm out of Minneapolis. I know nothing about tech. I'm an entrepreneur. I've owned my apparel company for the last 23 years and have just recently stepped aside, and I'm looking at new opportunities and have dove into AI and I'm learning as much as possible of how I can bring AI to apparel or my industry that I know. I have a lot of ideas, and I'm working on 2 right now that are specific to B2B and B2C. And I'll leave it like that. Thank you.
Nice to have you here, Jeff.
Welcome, Jeff. And Big Dipper Visions Jr., you're up next.
And if you haven't raised your hand, we're just doing quick intros. If you would raise your hand, love to meet you.
Hi, I'm JR. I'm actually in Denver too. But I'm a jewelry designer. I use CAD and parametric programming to design a lot of what I create. And I'm a tech enthusiast and just curious about everything. So that's why I'm here.
Nice to have you here.
All right, welcome back. Appreciate that. David Preston, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm David. Thanks, Kyle, for inviting me back. And I want to join those of you who said that you know next to nothing about AI. You're in good company, or at least with me. And I've been in education for a long time, consulting a little bit longer than that, happily breaking curriculum and instruction. And most recently was invited to be the co-founder of an AI-powered social media environment for accelerating learning and engaging kids.
All right.
Well, cool.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thanks, David. And Roger Scott, you're up.
Hi, I'm not new, so it'll be several repeats for the older established folks, but I'm Roger Scott. I'm in Boulder, and I'm a retired software engineer. I guess compared to a lot of people who aren't tech people, I know a moderate amount about the AI side of things, so probably a good resource for questions and someone to shoot down people's non-technically based misapprehensions about some of this stuff. I have been learning a lot about the artistic side of it through this group and having a lot of fun with the image generation tools and things, and particularly been very interested in exploring the whole area of prompt crafting, which is just a fascinating new slice of the intellectual universe.
Yeah, no, Roger, I think you are among the most improved of the salon members where you came in. And what's fun about what you're doing, Roger, is because you're taking kind of an engineer's approach to prompt crafting, you're ending up generating these images that are just mind-blowing, right? And you're coming at it from a different perspective. That's a big part of why this group is together.
And Roger, you explained how AI works to me. So thank you.
Kyle, feel free to use the word warped and describe from my perspective. That's perfectly okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right, good. Anyone else on the internets want to say hi? Going once, going twice. Don't be shy. Come on. We're not that mean. A little bit.
All right, I will say if you don't feel like introducing yourself, please feel free to make comments in the chat. We want to hear what you have to say, and people are checking the chat during the meeting. So if you have questions or ideas, sometimes some pretty cool side conversations are happening. And then also please join us in the Discord and on LinkedIn. So even if you're not speaking here, we do want to hear your voice, and I want you to be part of the community.
And links to Discord and LinkedIn are in the chat as well. So.
And then I think was it Jackie that was talking about doing a lot of writing with GPT?
Yeah, that was me.
Hey, so I don't know if you saw it in the chat, but if you didn't, I think it could be, if you're open to it, it could be an interesting to have you speak at an upcoming salon about what you're learning with writing, because we do a lot of pictures, but I think having someone that's really focusing on the writing and what it makes possible, what are the downfalls. So if you're open to that, you don't have to answer now, so I'm not putting you on the spot, but if you didn't see the chat, I just wanted to say that out loud.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, good. It's really interesting. Yeah, so if you get in touch with Ken, he'll sort of figure out a slot for you in an upcoming salon. So I'd love to do that. I figured what might be good to do is, because people are asking about it, is I'm going to just share my screen and show some of the stuff, some of the parts of the announcement for OpenAI. So I'll play a little video here. It's a short little video.
GPT-4 is the latest AI system from OpenAI, the lab that created DALL-E and ChatGPT. GPT-4 is a breakthrough in problem-solving capabilities, For example, you can ask it how you would clean the inside of a tank filled with piranhas, and it'll give you something useful. It can also read, analyze, or generate up to 25,000 words of text. It can write code in all major programming languages. And it understands images as input and can reason with them in sophisticated ways. Most importantly, after we created GPT-4, we spent months making it safer and more aligned with how you want to use it. The methods we've developed to continuously improve GPT-4 will help us as we work towards AI systems that will empower us all.
So that's that. Let me share one other thing. So this was kind of their announcement page. There's a video here. I could play that video. I don't know if the sound will be good, but let me just scroll down through here. So one of the things it talks about is that it's better at being creative. So it can generate, edit, iterate with users on creative and technical writing tasks such as composing songs, writing screenplays. I tested the screenplay thing earlier. It was pretty impressive. It also does visual input. I think this is just a fascinating example where the prompt here is, what can I make with these ingredients? And there's the picture. And then it says, well, there's many options that you can make. Pancakes or waffles, crepes, French toast, omelet, frittata, quiche, custard, you know. So it's understanding what it's seeing. Again, like I said, this isn't available yet, but that's coming. And then longer context. So the ability to do 32,000 tokens or 25,000 words, up from 3,000. So that's a pretty big deal. Let's see. It is better at kind of reasoning and synthesizing things. Sounds like there's a question. I may not have an answer, but I'm happy to.
I understand. Make a comment. So if you watch the 22-minute webcast, live stream of the announcement, it has pretty detailed demonstrations and a really good demonstration of why the longer context is useful. Very basically, it takes like a giant manual and just drops it in there, and now it understands the manual, and it can basically it acts as if it had been trained on that specific manual, even though it was published after the training was done.
Yeah, it's a really good point. He was doing some coding, and because the GPT model only goes up to September of 2021, it didn't understand new things in whatever he was writing a bot for Discord. And so he basically just went to a page and just copied it all and then pasted it into GPT and then just asked the question again, fix the code. And it read that whole manual and fixed the code. It was insane. So it's better at kind of synthesizing stuff, so pulling information out of things. This one kind of blew my mind. So the uniform, they compared GPT 3.5 and 4 on a bunch of different tests, but two of the big ones. One was the uniform bar exam, where ChatGPT performed in the 10th percentile, GPT-4 performed in the 90th. And then for the biology Olympiad, which I assume is a biology test, but it was 31st with ChatGPT, and GPT-4 with vision, where it could actually look at the images in the test. It performed in the 99th percentile. Trying to think what else. They've made it safer. It's apparently safer, better aligned, more accurate. The Duolingo is a thing. Be My Eyes. So in the live video presentation today, it looks like they're working with this company called Be My Eyes to really refine the image understanding. But in terms of accessibility, the ability for people to just sort of point their camera at things and have the camera understand visually what's going on is going to be huge. Looks like it's going to be rolled into Stripe, Morgan Stanley, Khan Academy. The government of Iceland has apparently got GPT-4 in there.
Promote that in the announcement, yeah.
So anyway, it's all over Twitter. There's going to be all sorts of YouTube videos and things like that. But I figure what might be good is just, for anyone on the call, for anyone who's played today, just raise your hand. And like, if you have any questions, I'll answer what I can. There's not a lot to know about it because it just came out. I haven't played with it that much. But if anyone on the call knows any more than what I just showed or has any questions, why don't we just open it up? And if you have any general questions, we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the questions. My first one is, I remember OpenAI coming out and kind of downplaying GPT-4, saying that, people are going to be disappointed by it, but it kind of seems like, this is actually a pretty big step. And so I'm just wondering what people's thoughts are on why they downplayed it. And if this is considered a small step, I wonder what a big leap would be.
Well, I think that response that was from Sam Altman. It was in a specific interview, and they asked him specifically about, there's a graphic going around on Twitter that said that GPT-3 was 175 billion parameters and GPT-4 was going to be like 1 trillion or 100 trillion or something like that. And he said that graphic in particular was bullshit. And he said, he said, people are assuming that GPT-4 is going to be AGI, artificial general intelligence. And what he said is it's not going to be that. But the fact that it's multimodal is a pretty big deal. So I think he was just trying to set expectations. So I don't know if anyone knows any more than that, but I know that's what he was responding specifically to.
The multimodal thing is the big surprise to me because they outright said it wasn't going to be multimodal.
They outright said it was not going to be multimodal?
Yes, so that's just a 180 on that one.
Yeah.
And they had to have known all along. It's not something they dropped in the last minute.
Allison, you have your hand raised. You want to contribute?
Yeah. So I had seen, I can't remember now if it was rumors or news articles saying that GPT-4 would have text to video, and that I didn't see anything that looked like text to video in that announcement. So I didn't watch it super closely either. I'm just curious if anyone can respond to that. And I would also guess that if it doesn't have text to video, that is another way in which it could be perceived as a disappointment, because I feel like a lot of people have seen image generation now and they're like waiting for that same level of creativity to be applied to video, and it's going to be a while before we get there, I think.
Yeah, I think it is too. As far as I can tell, text to video is not in there. I don't even think text to image is in there right now. So understanding.
Oh, wow. It's not text to image either. Okay.
I don't think so. I think so even the image ingestion is not available right now. That's still in testing, and that's what they're working on with that visual company that I mentioned earlier. But I assume it will be coming, and also Microsoft has an event on the 16th, on Thursday of this week. So they might be announcing something. I know I've talked to, it might have been you, Manny, RetroManni. Did you play with, you played with the new DALL-E?
DALL-E 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the new DALL-E, their new experimental version is apparently quite good. So I would assume all that stuff's coming, but it looks like right now the GPT-4 is focused more on the language and the ability to read images rather than any outputs. So in that sense, it's not multimodal on the output side, from what I can gather.
Could you ask it to generate prompts based on a photo? I assume so. Like from that recipe example.
I mean, you might have to teach it how you want it to format prompts, like to be coded specifically to like Stable Diffusion versus DALL-E, but it should be able to do that right out the gate.
Yeah, and with 25,000 words for its context, you could probably take a whole prompt writing documentation and just paste it in and say, read this image and write me a prompt that follows this documentation. So that was what was interesting about the live event today, which I thought was incredibly lackluster and boring and not really well done. It was very clear that OpenAI really doesn't have a lot of ideas about how this is going to be used. They're kind of putting it out into the world going, we don't quite know how people are going to use this. Good luck. Go do something interesting with it. So yeah, you know, the implications of it being able to read images. The one thing he did in the live demo was he took a very crude sketch of a web page and had it read the sketch of his web page and then write the HTML for that web page, and it made it functional with functional buttons. Yeah, it was a wireframe with really bad handwriting.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't read the handwriting, and it not only read the handwriting and the layout of the page, but it coded it and it was functional. So what's possible is, I don't know. I can't keep this in my head anymore. It scares me.
I didn't get a chance to watch the webcast, so maybe this is a question you can answer. But there's a lot of software kind of already wrapped around GPT-3, 3.5. So I'm just wondering, how will those softwares be able to just upgrade to GPT-4, or are they going to license it differently, or do you have any insights on that?
It seems like it's the same. It's the playground, the chat interface for 3.5 Turbo, where you've got sort of a system input where you tell it what its role is. Like, you know, you're a senior systems engineer, and I want you to respond in that sense. He said that's still the primary mode. He said GPT-4 is going to be much better at following that persona. Like, whatever you tell it to do, it's going to interact with the end user much more accurately to whatever that input is. So I think it's going to be the same.
You know, I have to imagine that they're going to have to refactor a lot of the pseudo-explanatory code, because you're going from 3.5 to 4. So there should be some sort of, like, it's smarter now. All the psychology you use to kind of like keep it from turning to like a babbling psychopath. Like, it may have to be tweaked and updated so a lot of those platforms that have wrapped GPT 3.5, they may have to go back and do plumbing to like take full advantage of the optimizations.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, that's the good outcome, right? Is the only work you have to do is you want to take advantage of the improvements. The bad outcome is, just to be where you are today, you've got to do a bunch of work. And although they didn't address the API compatibility question directly, reading between the lines, it sort of sounds like the basic API is pretty well aligned with 3.5.
Yeah.
And they didn't decide to just take a blank sheet of paper and redesign it. But you're absolutely right, Oscar, that, you know, if you want to take advantage of the new stuff, it's almost certainly going to be new arguments, new entry points that we have to use to get that. But, you know, that's to be expected.
But it sounds like it just got more accurate and more concise. And in ChatGPT Plus, when you flip to, actually, maybe I can show it to you. Hang on, this is kind of interesting. So when you roll, so this is ChatGPT Plus. So here's default GPT-5. So notice reasoning is three stars, speed is 5 stars, conciseness is 2 stars, legacy 3.5. So that's ChatGPT Turbo. This is I guess non-turbo. And then GPT-4, reasoning is a 5, speed is a 2, and then conciseness is a 4. So it kind of shows you, the sort of strengths of each of the things, which I thought was kind of interesting. It is very slow. Like, I've noticed it's slower than GPT-3. So this is just going to be one of those things where, depending on what you're trying to build with the application, you might want to use a codex model or one of the GPT models, and they're all going to have trade-offs. So that's pretty interesting.
He was very clear that they're working, they're well aware of the speed problem, they're working on it.
Gotcha. DG, you have your hand raised. You want to contribute something?
Yeah, it's obviously it's early hours, let alone early days. But the thing that struck me is obviously the fantastic capabilities and things to be found out. But a couple of our guests that we've had in the weeks before had obviously seen some previews of this, and they were saying the world is not prepared, right? There's a little bit of that sort of like, we're not ready for this, and so while this is impressive and we're going to find great uses for it, I didn't have the Skynet moment playing around with it yet, and any of the preview stuff. So what were they seeing or were they seeing things that we haven't seen yet that are yet to come?
I don't know. I had a bit of, I didn't have a Skynet moment, but I had a bit of, I almost get the sense that every piece of software is essentially going to have to be burned to the ground and reconceived. Because you're gonna have pieces of software that have spent, you know, a decade writing a specific kind of logic for analyzing some data set and doing something interesting with it, that now all of a sudden this model can just do. And so then what's the role of that software that, you know, there's still some value in the intellectual property behind how they do what they do. But if that can now just be processed in an instant with a tool like this, what does that mean for that team, right? And for that software. And so for me, it's just the fact that OpenAI was like, we don't quite know what to do with this. We're excited. You're going to figure out what the hell to do with it. It just says to me that there's so much we don't know yet about what's even possible. But my gut is just every piece of software is going to have to look at what they do and kind of compare it to what's coming because of these capabilities.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
That's seismic enough in its own right. Yeah, definitely.
I laud their ability to make all of us pay to be the alpha and beta users for, like, you know, GPT-4, because we're all going to be coding up applications on this platform, and we're the ones going to be defining the edge cases, and we're going to be expanding that out. So there's a part of me that's full on conspiracy. Like, whatever they were talking about, how like you're not ready for GPT-4, they're like, okay, release GPT 3.6 and just call it 4 and just tell them to shut the fuck up. And like,
yeah, that's very possible. So anyway, my request to everyone here would be this, you know, if you can get access to it, go play with it. It should be available in the playground soon. If you're on ChatGPT Plus, you can get access to it now. Jump in the Discord and share what you're learning. If you're not in the Discord, please do that. Maybe Ken, you can drop the invite link in the chat for everyone. And with that, I would love to shift gears and turn the salon over to RetroManni, who is dialing in from the UK, apparently from Peaky Blinders territory, and I'm really excited to hear you and I chatted earlier today for a brief moment. I'm really excited what you're up to, and I'm just thrilled to have you here and excited to hear what you have to share with us. So take it away, Manny.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. But that was really fascinating anyway, just listening to everyone. Just to check, can everyone hear me, by the way?
Yeah, you're good.
Yep, we can hear.
So I think with AI, I'm already terrified and fascinated at the same time. And the amount of times I've heard Skynet in this meeting is probably edged me towards more terrified. And I think also the words "it's coming" as well. I hear the word "it's coming" quite a lot, and it's kind of slightly unnerving. But at the same time, I'm a digital artist and I'm a writer director as well. And my whole area, if you will, and the themes that I deal with are cyberpunk and the dystopia. So everything that's happening at the moment, I find very fascinating. In fact, my first when I got into NFTs, my first collection was called the Cyberpunk Collection, and it was all about the future that had been predicted, and it's now coming. So that was actually created using photo bashing, so using Photoshop, getting photos that I'd taken and meshing them together and turning them into something different. So I'm kind of no stranger to, in terms of art, creating things that people don't think is really art, and then you kind of have to just roll with it. And I think when I first started exploring painting, coming from a background of filmmaking and just taking photos and messing around in Photoshop, I felt all the kind of judgment, I think, from the artist community, where it was about, you know, you need to be a proper artist, you need to understand form, you need to understand shape, you need to understand color. And the little perfectionist in me was getting really frustrated, and then really seeking to just try and be good at everything and going away and being a little bit of a one-man band as well. just trying to do everything and trying to figure out and being a bit of a nerd and tinkering and everything. So in terms of that, the idea of AI is very fascinating for me, because it's another tool that I could use in my workflow to try and help me create what I want to create. And it's more about a vision, really. It's more about having a vision and then looking around. And being a director, that's what a director does essentially. You've got all these little, they're not artificial intelligence, they're real human beings that you tell, can you do this? Can you move the camera there? Can you set it up? Can you point it there? Can actors, can you say this? Maybe could you say it with a little bit of this accent this time or whatever? So in a sense, I'm no stranger to that, only it's with non-artificial AI. But so, you know, it was kind of interesting when I saw a lot of this art come out, and I wasn't too sure about what it really was at first, and how it was made. And when I got into the NFT scene, there's a lot of Twitter spaces, and one particular Twitter space I became quite good friends with someone who I ended up doing a collaboration with. And I kind of had my understanding of AI was that it could be used by me as a tool to create stock images. So rather than going and finding images or going and taking photographs to use to photo bash together, how about I create separate, like whatever I want, create them and then cut them out and manipulate them and create what I want. So the guy I was going to, we were talking about collaborating with, said, well, why don't I just generate, I'm playing around with, I think it was, is it Night Cafe? He was playing around with Night Cafe, and he said, well, let me generate some stuff based on what I know about you, and then you go ahead and do what you want. So I want to first show you just the sort of the nuts and bolts of how that project was put together. And I'm going to play a video for you now. So can I just share screen?
Yeah, if you're going to play the video, share a tab.
Share tab, yeah.
And then that'll play the audio. And then if you want to share your full screen, you can do that separate.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to press play in a second. So this just demonstrates all the different images that were created in AI, and it shows how I then used them. So I'm just going to play this.
We can't hear anything.
There's no sound for this one.
No. Did you share the tab?
Yeah. Can you see it?
We can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no sound for this one.
Ah, okay, got it. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So hopefully from that, if you're able to watch that, you could see that it was just turn that tab off now. You can see that it was these images were brought in, and then I sort of photo bashed them together in Photoshop, and then I took it into another software and painted over it. And really what that was doing was generating an idea. It was brainstorming, which sort of moved me away from that original idea of, oh, maybe I can use stock images. It was more about, well, I could never have thought of that idea by myself. I had to see all these different images and try to understand in my brain, well, where could they be placed and how could I work with these? So that was actually a bit of a fascinating experiment. But what I was struggling with as I started to see more and more AI art come out was we were just being bombarded with, everyone was putting out image after image every single day. And the idea of NFTs for me is it's scarcity, and it's not just scarcity for the sake of scarcity. It's your brand. It's whatever you create. There's some value to it because you don't do a lot of it, but whatever you do, you do it really, really well. And I saw some absolutely stunning images day after day, bombarded my whole Twitter feed, all AI generated. And that got me thinking, well, how do I separate this project that I'm doing from anything else? And the truth of the matter was it's story. You need to create a narrative, and I know that from being a filmmaker. So I applied that, not just the narrative within the frame of the painting, but what about a narrative within a moving image? So that got me jumping into Blender, and then creating this project, which I called Artificial Dreams, which was the ultimate collaboration between me and the artist, whose name's Vincent. And I'm just going to play that for you now. So I'm just going to share my tab. Hopefully this has sound, hopefully.
Okay, we'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully you heard that. So that was the music was created by me, no AI. All the Blender stuff was no AI, but the whole point of it was showing AI through the moving image, and the whole it's kind of dramatizing the idea of someone prompting, some kind of hints of I guess Terminator, RoboCop, and all this 80s stuff that I love. Some anime in there as well, but it was about telling a story. And for me, that was kind of celebrating my entry into accepting AI as a thing that can be used. I don't think I've still fully embraced it yet because I'm still understanding its place in my workflow. But as, for instance, Blender's improving, there's loads of plugins that are coming that are just, I can't wrap my head around how easy it's making things. And it's, yeah, so that's another conversation altogether. I was also then approached, which I found this a really fascinating project because I was approached off the back of that by another really, really strong AI artist by the name of Lucid Dreamer, who had created a film, and he wanted me to do, he loved the music I did for the last piece and wanted me to do something with this. So we worked together on that project, and I want to show you this. I didn't do the visuals, but what I did do was I created the music to it, and then I said we came up with a title, and I wanted to add an animated title at the end of it. And hopefully you'll see in this piece when I play it, but it was very tricky to try and create a title that had the same aesthetic feel, look, and also motion that AI animation at that point anyway brought. And normally it's all about me trying to make it look very slick and smooth, but this was a different challenge. So I was almost matching and trying to understand how AI works and then working backwards to try and recreate that in After Effects, which I found interesting. But yeah, I'm just going to play that for you now. Let's share the tab. And the interesting thing about this is the artist Lucid Dreamer also wrote a big, like, full story about this as well, and it's on the object page. You can see. Oh, we're going to struggle with the load here. Let me just refresh it. Sorry. So yeah, so that was that piece. And the other challenge with that was the creation of the music, because there's a big temptation to make that music very doom and gloom, like terrifying what's coming. But I kind of wanted to romanticize it. And that was a big challenge, and I never would have thought of putting a saxophone to some AI images, but it worked in my opinion. So and it gave, I think, a different perspective on what is the idea of it's coming. It gave a different perspective. I wonder how we can see this in a beautiful way, maybe. So I've also been playing myself with DALL-E 2 quite a bit, and I was using it to create like a bank of images that I would one day use. And this is another case of my opinion evolving. Is I used it, and then eventually it became like a mood board for another project I was working on, and then that mood board almost became its own piece of art. And it's funnily enough, I thought I'd share it. I never thought I would share it. But I shared it, and I'll just show you now. People's responses on Instagram and even on Twitter were quite impressive, actually. And people saw it as its own piece of work, and I didn't think it could be used in this way, and it kind of gave me an idea. And I'm seeing a couple of your guys' backgrounds as well, where you've created these. They're almost like mood boards of what you've created of these PFPs, and I felt like there was more strength in that, rather than seeing these individual images. It's the power of it is creating mood boards for me, and I'm starting to see how that fits in as part of that workflow. And just to finish off, so who knows where it's going for me? I'm using it and I'm figuring it out, but I still very much am passionate about using the skills that I've got and have developed in terms of painting. I enjoy painting. I enjoy the physical act of painting, but the bits that I don't enjoy, that's where I'm going to start seeing how AI can come in and do those bits. For instance, someone said earlier, generating titles. Sometimes I just hate that. So if someone could just brainstorm something for me, then I can choose. That would be great. There's a lot of innovation coming with AI, and the thing that stands out, a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing, is the innovation. I was saying to Kyle earlier, some of the fashion stuff, really impressive. Some of the writing is really impressive as well. But I think on the flip side of it, we've got an overload of stuff, people who are just creating and flooding their own brand with just images every day, and minting them. I think it's another aspect of NFTs, is they're trying to sell this work, and they're almost diminishing their brand because they're creating what everybody is creating and they're not innovating with it. But I think that's the case with every technology. Photography is a great example. If you go on Instagram, everybody's taking photos every single day. There's very few that are photos that you probably want to buy and want to hang in your house. So I think that's going to be the tipping point where people are going to start having to separate themselves, because art has been democratized in that sense. So it's fascinating. It is a little bit terrifying, and that's not the art side. I think the art side is great, but there are going to be people whose current role is no longer needed, but it's about how we evolve with it. So yeah, thanks for letting me speak, Kyle. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's great. You said, would you be willing to share any of your that mood board that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I had it up and I didn't share the screen, did I?
Oh yeah, no.
I was sitting there talking about it as if you could all see it. There you go.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, that does become kind of its own language, doesn't it? Seeing what you've curated into the mood board.
Yeah, I mean, individually the images aren't very good, but as a collective, and you can see why I use it as a mood board. They create something different. You're just seeing this wall of color and imagery, and it gives you a sense. And Miami was one of the biggest inspirations for this, and RetroWave, because that's part of my brand. But yeah.
That's awesome. That's exactly what I was thinking.
I do wonder what could also potentially happen if you turn this into a style training data set and then applied it as well, because it feels so clearly like your voice in these images.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Great, Manny, thanks. So if you want to ask Manny a question, please raise your hand. If either of you guys want to ask him a question, just let me know, or just pop up. But thank you for sharing that. I'm curious. It sounds like you're both excited and terrified. What is the thing that if it's coming, like, what is the thing you're most excited about that's coming?
Well, I think it's how it's going to not just cut down time. So I think that's probably the wrong way of looking at it. But there's so many things I want to achieve, especially being an NFT and being an independent artist now who's got their own business, and this is how I earn a living now. I think being able to achieve way more in a shorter amount of time without being stressed out about it. That's great. That's a really good thing. And I think the other thing is having ideas that I never would have come up with by myself. And as a filmmaker, I know this. I collaborate with another filmmaker, so I write and direct as a team. And I know the value of having someone else to bounce ideas off or to draw inspiration from another person. I'm quite spiritual in a way, though, so I tend to feel like there's an energy as well. Whereas with AI, where's that coming from? But I'm also fascinated because I've been hearing a lot of things about how AI, we're really tapping into some kind of potentially ancient knowledge and ancient wisdom, which I wouldn't mind subscribing to if it is. And I think it's very interesting what's coming. And I think we shouldn't have fear. I think it's easy to have fear and say it is terrifying because we've watched all these films, right? But I think it's trying to understand, well, how can we utilize it, not get used by it, but how can we use it to make our lives better?
Awesome.
All right, looks like we have a couple of questions here. Michael, you want to go first?
Yeah, hey Retro, that is amazing work. Really, really stunning. I'm a creative on the commercial side of things, so it's really wonderful to see that. Just a couple of questions. Hey, how did you fall into AI? What was kind of the catalyst there? And also stylistically, I mean, I grew up in the 80s and I love that visual language that you're using. I'm just curious what inspired you to go there? I'm just curious from my own perspective.
You know what? I think the biggest catalyst for me was seeing all the judgment of AI artists, and I thought it's unfair to judge until I go there myself, right? And I think one of the really, really interesting things was as I was learning to paint, I traced a lot, and I learned to draw. I traced a lot, and so I would take photos of myself and my wife and my kids, and sort of make them pose and things like that, and then go and trace them. And the amount of times I heard, you're not a real artist if you trace. I also did some fan art. So one of my favorite films is A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which is an Iranian, American Iranian film. And I painted my own version of it. And I remember I spoke about it, and I remember getting heavily criticized for, why are you painting that? Like, that's not your art. And I thought, okay, yeah, it is. I'm doing my own version of it. But it really got to me. And it felt very like, ooh, I didn't like it. And I saw the same thing happening with AI artists. So I thought, well, I've got to go there. But it's interesting, we're seeing a switch where at first all the AI artists that I saw anyway were all getting attacked. And now it's the other way around. It's like, if you're not using AI, you're going to get left behind, and you're not a real artist if you're not using AI. So it's always good to get both perspectives. That's the way I saw it. I hope that answers the question.
All right, great, thanks. Jeff Gray, you have a question?
Yes, hi Retro. Thank you for that very interesting talk. You've mentioned, I got really excited when you mentioned the word fashion, because that's what I'm doing. And I wanted just to see, you said that there's a lot of stuff going in fashion, and what you're seeing and what you were kind of referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even,
so
even if you could share any of that, if there's anything, I know it's
you
kind
know
of
what?
put you on the spot, but
I will. What I will do is if you give me a moment, I'll share some people for you to go and have a look at.
yeah, it'd be
So
great.
there's an artist called Strange Thing who did a piece of art called Thug Lord. I don't quote me on this story. Terry might correct me on this. I'm not sure because you might know what I'm talking about as well, Terry. But there was an artist called Strange Thing, and he did a piece called Thug Lord, and it had the Nike symbol in it, and it was like these old, I don't know what period it was, but like sort of almost period paintings of regal kind of characters and people, but they're dressed like me, like in a hoodie. But it looked it's a very stunning piece, and it's got the Nike symbol on it. And I think there was some debate with whether he was allowed to put the Nike symbol on there, and there was a big problem. But now I think he does some work for Nike now, which is interesting. And what he does is he creates this kind of mix between two different cultures. So at the moment, I believe he's British. He's doing a collection where he's taking. Imagine if people on the streets nowadays, kind of like young teenage thugs, as you were. Imagine if they didn't have cars. Imagine if they only had horses. And he's paired that together, and he's created fashion that goes along with that suits it, and it's really interesting. And then the other side I've seen is where they've taken like the outfits of NASA, like astronaut uniforms, and they've used that AI to turn that into fashion, to create stuff that you just I've never seen before. Not that I'm a fashionista or anything, but I find it really innovative the way they've done that. So it's a lot of this because it's AI. It's like, okay, we'll take that culture and we'll take that culture and we'll sprinkle a bit of that and then see what happens. And stuff happens. You start seeing things that you couldn't imagine otherwise. So, but yeah, in a moment I'll share some people to look at in the chat.
Very interesting.
One of the questions.
I guess I had a question. It kind of all went over my head just a little bit, and so maybe you could reiterate the part. I know you had said like right before you played the video that it wasn't all AI. There were several pieces and parts that you did to alter it manually. So maybe you could just kind of reiterate the part that was AI and just speak to how it impressed me how seamless the AI part really kind of melded with the parts that you did manually. And so I wasn't able to tell which was AI and which you did manually.
I mean, what I could just do, if I just show you through that video, I can just quickly break it down. That's all right.
That'd be great.
So this is, if you saw the piece that was an animation, that was all done in Blender, but it's this particular piece of artwork that came out of it. So see that first image, that's AI. And you can see the title here, if you remember the title, and you got the character here, and you got these buildings in the back. And then you've got these kind of other images come in. I'll just play it. So you've got another image there that comes in, and then you've got this car image which has the sun in it. You got that shop, and then you got this kind of Mega Man type character. And I positioned them all into place to look like that, and then did a bit of Photoshop work to blend them in and get some colors. And then I took it into a piece of software called Rebel, which is just a painting software. So I've got a tablet and I paint, and then I used it as a basis to paint my own version of what I saw. And so that's how you ended up with basically this. But the idea was I couldn't have arrived at this painting unless I had that. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And regarding your like the music video that you played, is that on your website? Is that on YouTube, or was that just something from your personal collection? Or
that's on my object page. So it's a collaboration I did with Lucid Dreamer. So he did that in a version of Stable Diffusion, which allowed animation. So I'm not going to not do it justice by trying to explain it because I don't completely know how it was done. But
yeah, so I know it was based on a stable diffusion model is about the best I could say about that. And there's another piece that he's done. He wanted to do this first, but there's another piece we're going to do together as well, which I've seen that and it blew my mind. It was absolutely amazing. And I don't know what he's working on at the moment, because both of these pieces that he'd done were done in like November time, I want to say. And we know how much things have changed since then. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Josh, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, RetroManni, for sharing with the group. I wrote down some notes earlier, and what I think is a little bit interesting, and I'm interested to hear more of your perspective as an artist and creator on this. I think early on during the introductions, Eric Rowland mentioned like everyone's excited about full automation in the future, but I think we're going to be human in the loop for quite some time. Eric, I hope I got your words mostly correct there. And I feel like that's the space that I've been in, the mindset that I've been in for a while, as I see developers, playing with AI, taking away some of the grunt work, so they can focus on the more interesting parts of the coding challenges and problems, and the same for writers, and whether it's for content online or whatever. And you said along the way that you found this great benefit of using the art as sort of brainstorming material, or almost as a brainstorming partner. And I hopped over to one of the links that people had shared in the chat about, I think on Becoming Human AI, the interview that you did there, that you see it really as a powerful tool for asset creation, for idea generation. So I'm just kind of curious about how you're thinking about using AI in these artistic ways, as a complement or a partner, and whether that's sort of the mindset that you're embracing when it comes to these creative endeavors that you're setting on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way of describing, it's really interesting how things line up, because the best way of, I think, explaining how I feel it working is I've been a filmmaker, so I say writer director now because that's what I'm doing now. But I was a filmmaker before that, meaning I did everything. And I worked with one other person, and we basically cinematography, lighting, editing, grading, everything, right? And when I started getting funded projects, and particularly this project that I had this year, which was was a lot of money spent on it, and I couldn't make the separation between trusting somebody else to do what I knew I could do really, really well. And so it was about, on one side, letting go and going, okay, if you trust somebody else and then you just do the stuff that you're really good at and you really enjoy doing, not the stuff that you have to do and know you do well technically, but you save yourself your energy to be able to put towards creating good ideas, and then you sort of let it go a little bit. And so when I was on the film set, it was a bit strange having someone else with a camera, and someone else after do editing, and even the producing. It wasn't me. It was organizing everything. It was all out of my hands. I just focused on writing the script and directing the film. There were some issues, so I had to take over the editing in the end, and I had to take over the color grading in the end. But for the most part, the team, it was a big team of like 40 people. And I think that's a little bit how I'm seeing AI. So there's certain bits that I really love doing. I love creating when I'm painting and animating. There's certain bits that I feel like if I asked somebody else to do them, they wouldn't do as good. They wouldn't pay as much attention as I would, and they wouldn't be as. And I think that's down to a bit of a perfection thing, which I'm trying to let go of anyway. But I think with AI, it might be able to do that. And I think the point is, people want to work with people who are at least as good as them in their own minds, or better. And better is always obviously better. So I think AI comes in a little bit there, because the problem with working with other people is budget. And you have to understand, well, how much of a budget do you have? You do want to work with other people, because sometimes there's just an energy that's created, that you create things that you could never have thought of. But then there's certain aspects that, yeah, we could we could hire somebody else, or I could do it, and it would take me a long time. It would be stressful. But if I could get AI to do that, then everybody's happy. It's not taking jobs away from people in a sense. It's more about making my life easier. And so I'm not trying to take on too much just to trying to get this project out by a certain time or whatever it might be. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Well, Manny, thank you so much for being here. I know it's very late for you, and hopefully you didn't wake up the kids, but this was absolutely awesome. So one of our traditions here, we have traditions, we're only 3 months old, is a polite little golf clap for you. So thank you very much. A well-earned golf clap. Really appreciate your generosity and your willingness to jump in here. So thank you very, very much.
Manny, that was super inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thank you to Terry for inviting me as well. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. This was awesome. Thank you, Retro.
Yeah, just awesome. All right, great. So now let's shift gears. Let me introduce Michael Milligan. Milligan, I think. Milligan?
Milligan's mine, yes.
Milligan is, so Michael
Milligan.
Milligan, okay, is design director at Deloitte Digital. First of all, I want to acknowledge you for being here. I asked my friend Scott, who works at Deloitte Digital, can you present? And he said, no, I can't, but let me get Michael. And so I think he just sort of said, Michael, go do this. Go talk to this guy. So we had a really good talk, really fascinating talk. And he's going to sort of take it up to a different level, right? This is Deloitte Digital, and he works there. And so he's going to discuss how he thinks about AI, how they're thinking about AI. And I'm really excited to have you here. So thank you for being here, Michael. And really excited to hear what you have to share.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. That was very nice. Yeah, it's interesting because particularly after hearing kind of Retro's story from a real kind of creative perspective, I work at a very risk-adverse place, being part of a large accounting firm as your parent company. They're very, very sensitive about legalities when it comes to this stuff. So it's been really interesting for the past 6 months.
Hey, Michael, can you, are you willing to turn on your camera?
Oh, I apologize. I didn't realize it was off. There we go. Sorry. Tell me.
Sorry. You have such a nice scarf and hat and beard. I wanted to make sure that you were fully represented.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
So it's been a really interesting journey. My background has been a creative director, design director based out of New York, and a lot of big advertising and brand design houses, and worked a lot in kind of the luxury in the fashion space. So very much about what I've always done is to help define and work through what I call an atmosphere for a brand. So it's been really interesting. At Deloitte Digital, it's a traditional agency that I work for. I work kind of in between the brand design department and the traditional advertising department. And being from the consulting world, I have a PowerPoint or a keynote, because that's how we do everything. So without further ado, let me share my screen and we can kind of run through some of the things and I can explain this.
We would expect nothing less.
Okay, good. Here we go. Can you see the screen?
Looks like it's coming. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is, and I'm trying to keep this in a very optimistic viewpoint because I do find it fascinating. Like I said, I've been involved in and out of it for 6 months. Really starting this summer. I randomly came across a generative AI through Twitter or one of the online services and just was fascinated, dipped into it a little bit. It scared the shit out of me, honestly. I thought it was, watching a craft that I had been part of for the past 20 years. In very many ways, kind of instantly dissolve and rebuild itself within a few minutes. So that took a little time to come to terms with. But it's been a real interesting journey. So what I'm going to share with you is I'm going to share with you kind of how I've been trying to implement AI in a Deloitte creative work stream. And everything you see in the deck is images that I've created, mostly playing around, and I use a lot of the images for things like image boards in the early stages of the creative exploration to help visualize ideas. I mean, that's just the way I work. So this is just a little bit about Deloitte. I'm going to give you, we are a full service creative agency, and we work in new ways to solve new problems and unlock new growths. There's really four main parts of the agency that I'm involved with, which is the advertising, the brand, which is also very much strategy, the design, brand design, and experience design. And a lot of the projects that I'm involved with are involving at least two, more often than not all of them on some of the projects. So, and this is just to give you an idea of some of the type of work that's done there currently. So these are just 3 projects. You can see we are the agency of record for NYU and Gateway Health and this Amex on the right-hand side. We just did a very big project kind of reinventing their guidelines and bringing kind of new technology moments into that. Then a little bit about myself. So I'm a creative director, design director currently at Deloitte Digital. I very much, like the rest of the group, have looked at AI as a creative partner. And really the idea with anything that I work on from a creative standpoint is really to kind of bridge the gap between technology and that human experience. So any of those, and very much it's words and pictures and movement and all of those things to really help communicate a brand. And I've found AI really invigorating, and it's opened up a lot of possibilities in my exploration through the creative process. So I'm a big fan of it. What I'm going to focus on here is that, so because being risk adverse at Deloitte, we are really not allowed to use AI for any final projects. So how I've been using it is I've been using it really to help image boards create what we call atmosphere, tone, and manner direction for projects. And that could be branding, that could be a commercial, that could be an environment in terms of a retail environment. And that's been super successful because you've been able to really work through a lot of ideas quickly, experiment things, and get an idea of tonality. So historically, this is my past world. So these are projects that I've worked on in the past before pre-AI. So the rebranding of Pepsi, the rebranding of Delta Airlines, the experience amazing of Lexus, their new platform. I've done a lot of work for Gucci and helped create hotels and experiences, the Fontainebleau in Miami and the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas in Vegas, obviously. But a lot of those were really about helping to establish what I call a tonality or a vibe or a feeling. And in the traditional sense, we've worked a lot with architects and interior designers and fashion designers, and there was a lot of models being built, and a lot of very tedious hand drawing experimentation, and things were very, very time consuming. And this has really changed everything. I mean, it's really changed. So this was the world before. Then this. And these are just some of the images that were created very quickly for some of the inspiration at Deloitte. And I've kind of broken it down into 4 different areas of where I've been using it. The first one being fashion and style. And this can happen in a couple of areas. It can be in terms of helping define the tonality and the mood for the actual fashion or brand itself. So it can be used kind of as an image board from that standpoint. We've also used them in terms of helping capture things like lighting and tonality and mood. you know, having worked with a lot of amazing fashion photographers in my earlier days, folks like Sebastian Kim and Stephen Meisel, I was always fascinated by how they understood how to manipulate light and not only bring the personality out of the models they worked with, but I was really more fascinated about how they were able to really capture and turn light and play with light, and was a very magical experience to me watching them do it in person. So I mean, this is one thing I feel that the generative AI is amazing at. If you give it the right prompts, if you understand the nuances of lighting and camera and lenses and film, you can really get a lot out of it in a very fast and successful experimentation. So this is just a series of some of those. Then I've been playing around more with like ControlNet and some of those other technologies that in stable diffusion, and and it's really interesting with some practice and getting the right settings. You can really start to define, and actually with Midjourney as well, if you're using the seeds and some of those prompting tricks there, you can really start to capture a consistency, which in my business is a really big thing, and something that I've personally found really frustrating in a lot of ways, because we're all about, particularly because we're not doing the work is not our personal creative expression. We're being hired by a company or a corporation to kind of think about what their brand is, and so we play a very kind of middle role in that. But being able to have control and consistency on the output is really important, because there's usually a very comprehensive, tedious dialogue between the clients, the numerous clients on the client side and the folks on the creative side, through strategy and branding and advertising, to come to a common language, and then it needs to be defined with visuals. So again, you can start to see how that becomes quite successful. Then one of the other things I've been playing with a lot is, like, I've always been an industrial designer at heart. I don't have the skills. In terms of the technical skills, I've worked with a lot of great industrial designers, but I love the idea and the freedom it gives you to really start playing with structure. So this was just a very quick study of just looking at sunglasses and how some of the shapes and some of the vibe, the feeling you get out of the structure itself was really interesting. And I mean, all this stuff, like, nothing has been retouched. In my old world of photography, I was always shocked about, after you spent an absolute fortune with a fashion photographer, you would get the film, even digital, and I'm old enough where I did use film, and you would look at it and you were shocked because it needed so much work. It needed to go in retouching. Oftentimes the retouching would be as expensive, if not more expensive, particularly on the fashion end of things, of the photo shoots. And it's amazing to me that how far straight out of the box these images get without even any retouching. The other area I've been looking at is architecture and retail design. So I use this, and again, I because of NDA, I couldn't show actual projects, so I'm showing you kind of more theoretical and some of the exploration around it. But it just had a really successful pitch with a large government agency, where we were asked to redesign they have 33,000 retail spaces across the United States, and we were asked to look at and redesign the retail and make it more relevant and modern for today's lifestyle. And I did work with two different, Gensler and another smaller technology-based architecture firm. But in the early stages of the experimentation, I did a lot of work with the AI, and just it was almost like a sketch phase, where I started playing with space. I started looking at the key elements of it, and I was absolutely fascinated. It was my first time actually using it in a conceptual early stage creative phase, and I was amazed at how efficient it made the process, and also you really got a strong understanding of where we wanted to go. And it really helped the process a lot. So, I mean, you can see, again, it's like I've been playing around a lot with details of interiors and again, you know, I don't have any of that up here now, but I've been playing around with the control net and again, trying to get some consistency with some of their application. It's really fascinating. And again, you know,
and
just
Michael, if you could just briefly just tell folks what ControlNet is.
sure. Control net's and I'm no expert with it. I don't even know how new it is, but it's pretty
new.
It's pretty new. It's a plugin, I guess, or I don't really call it a plugin, but it's a implementation. I use it in Stable Diffusion. And what it does is or the way I've been using it is I will generate an image, I will upload it into ControlNet, and there's a bunch of parameters where it will silhouette the images, and there's variations of it. It'll do like a 3D depth interpretation. It'll do a very kind of standardized outline, but it creates a mask for when you're using Stable Diffusion for consistency. So if you wanted to keep somebody's body shape the same, if you wanted to keep a structure the same and just change the background, it allows you to do that. And I've just started playing with it. I mean, I think I've only been playing with it for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but it's fascinating. And particularly in my field, I can see, I don't know if anybody's come across it. I don't have it with me now, but there was somebody I saw on Twitter who did an exploration using the Nike swoosh. And what they did is they went through and it was, you know, these beautiful landscapes, waterfalls, bird's eye view of a beach, but they all subtly had the Nike swoosh in it. And you could just see the opportunity from a commercial branding standpoint of how that could do some really sexy things. I mean, visually really interesting and do it very quickly. So I think we're really at the cusp in my industry of where things will change very fast. And my guess is that the creative output will just blow you away. I think in the next couple of years, what you will see in terms of the commercial quality output visually will be really stunning. And then quickly, I can just run through, you know, this again was some very contemporary structures, even looking at drones. These, believe it or not, are like almost like ATMs that we were exploring on the left-hand side. And we took a lot of these, again, these are, you know, with the creative phase in what I do, we always call it the play stage, right? So it's really about, it isn't necessarily about getting things right. It's actually about getting a lot of things wrong, but it's about really opening up your mind and playing with it and pushing the boundaries and seeing where you can take things. So it's been fantastic for that. Production design obviously is a big one because you can start to really capture things that you just weren't able to do unless you went out on a very, very expensive shoot. And that's everything from character design to I'm still shocked at how well it captures things like, you know, a beautiful 68 Mustang or an early 70s 911 or a BMW 2002. I mean, it really captures some of those nuances. It isn't perfect, but with the right tuning, it really does some amazing things with that. And then, of course, like, you know, the most interesting, I think, is concept design. And that's really where you get to push your creativity to the limits. And it really helps. It really helps push the imagination from surrealism to, again, thinking about movie scenes and photo shoots and that type of thing to really capture a mood and tonality. And again, this is just a small sampling. Funny enough, and thank you all very much. That was for your time to to do that. And again, it's really interesting. I just spoke to Kyle yesterday, so I was kind of in a mad scramble to get work together to show. And I am not very organized with particularly with my AI exploration. It's all over the place. I didn't really capture any of the stable diffusion stuff because that's on a Google Drive somewhere. And so the majority of what you saw is kind of recent exploration out of Midjourney. There's a few Dolly pieces in there, but unretouched, just like straight out of the box. And for me, being able to create atmosphere is a big part of my business, and it really excels in that. So,
yeah, Michael, I mean, this is very, very impressive. The amount of work that you could show, even though you couldn't show actual work, was quite impressive. So thank you. What this reinforces something for me is that, it's your, decades of design experience that allows you to use these tools in a way that, you already knew how to do mood boards and concept boards and bring things to life. So you know the whole process, and your ability to kind of milk these tools and shape shift them how you need to do them. It reinforces for me the importance of experience. Steve, you and I were talking about this yesterday, right? That it's almost like the longer you've been on the planet, the more of an advantage you have using these tools, because they just are kind of gasoline to creative ideation. Couple of questions. I know if you've got questions for Michael, I see there's some, please raise your hand. One thing I'd love just some clarification on. I know that you can't use any AI generated stuff for final client work, but are you using kind of these AI generated mood boards to put in front of clients? So are they getting to see this, right? So, or is this all internal? I'm just curious, where's that balance? And then also, you mentioned to me something about the first time you did some of this AI stuff and presented it to the internal group, there was a bit of pushback and things like that. So I'd love to just hear sort of where those boundaries are and how they're kind of shifting.
Yes, absolutely. I have been able to use AI generated artwork for the early phases of helping establish mood boards and things like that with clients. Funny enough, I have received a lot of negative feedback from other designers and creatives who, like I think a lot of people, there's a threat there. There's a perceived threat, right? Of that it will take our jobs. I've, like everything in life, and being old enough to seen a lot of technologies come and change the landscape, it's very clear to me that you either understand it and embrace it, or you will not be part of the future of whatever you're doing. So, and it's really interesting because I work with a lot of very young, early 20s, late 20s, really talented, creative people, and they're not, the majority of them are not that in love with the idea of AI. I'm actually going to be doing a presentation for the company later this week and try to get them to embrace it and at least think about it and consider it, because it's really a wonderful tool if you start to understand it from a creative standpoint. So
awesome.
Awesome. So before we get to questions on virtual, does anyone in the Denver office have a question?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. All right. So Roger, you've had your hand up for a while. You want to go first?
Sure. This is related to Kyle's question. You mentioned a couple times, the risk-averse environment, and you name-checked your lawyers once, twice. Have they given you clear guidance that the use of AI for your internal ideation and mood boards, stuff like that, is cool, and there's this sort of bright boundary between, giving it out as a product, or are they like pretty nervous about using it at all?
They're very nervous. The reason I had a conversation with some of the executives the other day about it, and I think, for instance, with imagery, that, because of some of these lawsuits that are happening with Getty Images, I don't know if you've been following any of that, which is very unclear. There's a lot of gray area, and rightfully so. Their concern is that if an image is created, we use it in a commercial for commercial purposes, and then down the road we find out that there's liability issues because it was owned by somebody through Getty or another source that didn't sign off on the process. We are ultimately, as a company, held liable. So there's a lot of gray area, and I think until that is resolved, they're going to be very, very sensitive about it.
That end of it is relatively clear. I was wondering whether they're even nervous that someone's going to say, you used my IP to come up with in your process, even though you didn't put it out on the page, you still, my IP propelled your work that you got paid for, and thus you owe me some money.
Yeah, I mean, in our industry, it's even pre-AI. There was always, because it's a creative, and everything is about, honestly, is at least I believe that there's really nothing new under the sun. We find inspiration creatively from whether it's a great painter or an architect or an industrial designer. All those nuances, those inspirations are really part of our process and always have been. So, again, and I'm not a lawyer, so I really couldn't tell you where that gray line is, but it's definitely a hot topic.
All right, thanks for the question, Roger. Oscar, you have a question?
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much. That was incredible. I guess my question is, and I'm going to totally say it wrong, but you were showing some of the stuff that you did in your career, like the Pepsi imagery. Yes. For like, yes. So it's safe to assume that some of what you've done has been considered, consumed, and become part of like the Stable Diffusion trained model. Do you have any feelings about that like the stuff that you spent decades working on in some way has now diffused into like the subsequent like work that's being generated in some form or another?
I personally, no, I don't. I think it's there's a very famous designer, this guy Steven Sagmeister, who's based out of New York City, and he has an amazing Instagram feed, and he is somebody who's been used quite a bit in AI generation, and he is embraced. I feel like he has the right attitude. He's very critical of the bad interpretations, but he's somebody who is always pushing kind of the creative envelope, and he's been very pro using his library of creative work as inspiration. And frankly, I think that's kind of the right thing. I don't know the right thing to do, but I feel like it's inevitable, and embrace it. At this point, anyways. I mean, until there's new new ways to keep that under wraps, I feel that it is part of the process at this point.
Yeah, I mean, just to tag on that, because ultimately all information is expressed as data, whether it's image, visual, whatever. So the totality of all information has been just from one person to another and diffused out anyway it's gone out there. So pop culture, advertising, commercial, like artwork, that's all just a latest iteration of like how we spread information mimetically. So this consuming it, then like putting it back in the hands of people, that's probably not a terrible thing, but it is an interesting thing to consider.
It is, and just to give it put it in perspective, like in the traditional way of how we would go through concept generation is, we would be in an office, we would create what we call these creative war rooms, and we would plaster the room with inspiration. And it was from magazine ads. They were, we'd have a computer with movie still or, movie clips or video. So it was really all of these things that were your inspiration. We would have objects of art. You would bring in toys. You would bring in books, things that really were inspiration or had some connection to the strategy that we were trying to define. So in very much the same way, it's now it's just a digital interpretation.
All right, thanks for the question, Leah, you're up.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you. So I'm a photographer. I'm a commercial photographer, and I mostly build brand libraries. And I've done that for years and years and years. And one of the things I noticed is when we made the transition from film to digital, the images that were always on photo decks were pulled off of the Getty website, right? They're stock images pulled off of Getty, and they'd say, you know, you put your thing, but these are the images. And those are the images that clients signed off on. And I feel like over the last 10 years, there's been a kind of like Gettyization of lifestyle imagery. Like that's what a lot of lifestyle photography looks like now. And I've been thinking about, as creative teams start putting mid-journey images on their creative decks and photo decks and handing them to photographers while we still have jobs, I'm wondering how much the work that we are producing will start to have a kind of mid-journey-ish look to it, or a AI-generated look to it, because that's what the client's signing off on, and then we're being asked to recreate it.
You know, I think that's a big concern in general. You notice that a lot. Again, even with my short amount of time being involved in this space, 6 months, I've noticed there is a lot. I think it's just inherent to the algorithms or whatever it might be, or people have very similar tastes with their prompts. But I do feel that's a big issue, not only from what's being created from an AI standpoint, but also then asking a photographer to be able to recreate those scenes. So,
or illustrator, whoever the person is you're working with, this has gotten signed off on, and now we're actually copying what AI looks like before we can use AI for all
it's interesting
that you just
yeah, absolutely. It's very, very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's one of those things. It's with almost any art form, there's very different levels, right? Whether you're in fashion, whether it's photography, whether it's illustration, there's some people that are involved with it that just create things that you couldn't imagine, right? And I think that will be the same, whatever that tool is, whether it's AI or whether it's a traditional form like photography or hand drawing illustration. To me, it's really about the imagination and how creative people are. And you know, there's been a big fad in our industry, creative wise, that anything that has AI, particularly in advertising. I mean, we're a fad trend based business, right? So anything with AI in it tends to you know, get some play in that space, and it's not always meaningful. So I think we're in that kind of that transitional phase right now where there's a lot of hype because it's something that's new and that's something that's very interesting and intriguing. But at the end of the day, I think creative excellence and great ideas will really be the thing that push it to the next level. And I am 100% at this point believe that, you know, the stuff that you'll start to see because of this, because of people being able to iterate with it and really push the boundaries and saying, you know, like you said, it looks too boring now. Something that 6 months ago would have blown you away. So I think that's, you know, we're in an interesting time with that.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Janice, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious how much on the prompting, like what, can you give us any ideas on the prompting side? So for instance, I've gone into a number of different AI to, you know, get images and needing to put in, you know, can you include golden ratio? Can you include Fibonacci? Like trying to prompt it to, you know, give me that output, not just from a content standpoint, but from a design standpoint. Can you give us any tips in that?
Yeah, you know, it's one of those funny things where it's, you know, the chaos part of AI is the chaos factor is something I feel like you need to embrace. But that's the same with any creative process. Honestly, it's And it's interesting because I use Midjourney a lot because of its ease of use, and even three months ago, the prompts that I were very kind of descriptive and long and a bit cumbersome, and it was hit or miss what I would come out with. Recently, I've been keeping them very brief, a couple of words. I will put some details of a camera body, a lens, a film that is interesting to me. I might give some lighting details, and for whatever reason, particularly in Midjourney, the orientation. So whether it's 16:9 or 2:3, the format really has a dramatic influence on what that image is. Like I've played around quite a bit with, you just take the same prompt and you start playing with different formats, the same exact prompt, and it'll give you a very different output. So that's yeah. Wow. And I mean, it's so interesting if you're looking at like portrait photography, if you're looking at something that's more naturally a portrait, a 2:3 format, you get a better output. You want something that's a bit more epic. You want something that's more cinematographic. It's play with the 16:9 or some of the other dimensions. At least in Midjourney, that's been the case. Awesome. But I am no expert at it. I have my spreadsheet of things that have worked and haven't worked. I will go back and I will try them again, and the algorithm has changed, and they're no longer. Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. Jeff Gray, you're up.
Oh, thank you. Michael, you mentioned that you were in the fashion world and did some worked in apparel, was it? And you probably understand what's needed to generate ideas, especially when working with buyers or maybe it's an art director, and getting those ideas quickly is definitely a benefit, in being able to tweak them from there, and using it as a tool is just really important. I've seen that, and that's what I'm working on right now is trying to develop a tool for my industry that will help generate these ideas very quickly, because there's a huge benefit to that. And one thing that I've been having a problem with is either it's not ready yet for it, but the art isn't great for, let's say, a fashion design. I'll give you an example really quick. Like, let's say you're working on NBA logos, for example. Mm-hmm. You want to generate great ideas with NBA logos, and my thought is that you could train or fine tune AI to generate an image that you would like, or that would look like an NBA logo. Have you been using any training in any of your looks or anything like that?
No, and that's something that's on my bucket list. Is I did want to explore that a bit more. But funny enough, it's the real simple things like logos and flat art. I've had a lot of trouble actually getting anything that personally for my taste or what I need out of it to work for me. Where I've used it for, so for instance, there was a pitch that I was involved with about a month ago, and part of that entailed it was a revisiting uniform designs for this company, and I did use some of the AI in the early stages to help define some forms. So some forms, and I was able to play with it in terms of the prompting to give it some idea with colors and color blocking. And it was a bit of a tedious process. It wasn't anything that was instantaneous, but after some trial and error, I definitely had some success with it. So it's okay. But not in terms of like, if there was anything and again, I think it's one of those, it's really still very much in the early phases where you still need to use Photoshop or another image editing piece of software to add things like logos or create something very specific that you would want applied to the forms. At least that's been my experience.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thanks. Terry, you're up.
Yeah, along the lines of brands, do you think, and training, brands and training, do you think brands will be going to agencies and basically saying, I want you to train the AI, I prefer algorithm, on all our brand imagery, right? So that it could develop these libraries and then it could be walled off. Because I find that now, I think Retro mentioned it and I'm experiencing it, things are starting to look too similar. So if it's trained on all the imagery, then that creates a very specific thing for all, every specific brand, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think that will change, at least not right now. I mean, a big part of what I do and have done in the past and currently is really help establish some of those brands. So for instance, Delta Airlines, it was everything from the logo, the typography, the color palette, how the plane was painted, how the first class lounge looked, how uniform designs were, I mentioned that, signage, things like that. But there are these very, you work out the basics, the language of a system, and then those are fed into a proprietary a brand guidelines platform. So I think AI, it will probably be just another iteration of that. I still think you need to establish a brand's look and feel and really define that. And then, I'm assuming AI or the algorithm will help hopefully help keep it fresh, because that's a big part of the business. Is it's if you look at things like the logo of which sounds really silly, but it's very true, like Coca-Cola, how it's these minor refinements have been made over the years, just playing with shapes and some of the curvature and adjusting colors slightly. So it just feels it's a really subtle nod to what's relevant culturally. And that's something that happens often with particularly big brands. So I'm imagining that algorithms or AI will be helpful with that.
All right, and then I just have a quick question. I'm kind of curious how long it takes you to get when you were showing us kind of the demos of generated images, how long it takes you to get to the final product. How many times do you have to generate the image? How much time are you saving by doing that, and whatnot? If you could just speak to that.
Good question. I mean, I've come to the conclusion, it's funny enough, it's like, because I cannot I can't use it on my company computer. I'm not allowed to use any of the platforms. So it's usually on the weekends of my free time that I do these explorations. And for me, it's something. It's a bit of an intellectual challenge. I love it. I just find it really interesting. I'm not going to tell you it's always the most efficient way of going about it, but with anything we do, it's about the fun factor. That's a big part of it. Is it interesting? Are you taking something that's mundane and boring? Even if it took you an hour in a traditional sense, it might take you 2 hours in this, but it's interesting. It's keeping your mind going. It's making you, keeping you interested and intrigued. So, it's been really, usually with me, depending on how specific I need to get with something, I mean, where I've really used it a lot is in the early phases of exploring a lot of ideas, a lot of tonalities, a lot of visual things in that play stage that I talked about. Once you start becoming more focused and things need to get very, very, very narrow in terms of what you can and can't do with it, I still find going to traditional applications like Adobe Creative Suite and working with the group of designers or art directors to fine tune something the best bet. But anything that I've worked on has not been super time consuming. Hour. I mean, I have a limited attention span, to be honest with you. So.
Great. Well, we're right at the top of the hour. So, Michael, thank you so much. This was really, really inspiring. I love your clarity. So thank you so much. I think a golf clap well deserved.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you,
I
Kyle.
just appreciate you jumping in, kind of quickly without a lot of context. Really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would invite you to join our Discord. And when you are coming up against challenges or you have questions, there's often someone there who can answer them. I've learned a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Join the sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say thank you. Fantastic. It's a really great group, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. Yeah, you got it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We'll wrap it up. We've tried to do this on time because I know on the East Coast it's getting a little late. But awesome salon once again. Thank you all so much, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here.
What's the Discord? Discord is go to